Hi, I am Courtney.
Hey everyone, I am Alyssa.
Hello everyone, I'm Elijah Stewart.
And we're going to be talking about Pavlov's influence on developmental theory. So Pavlov was a Russian physiologist known for his discovery of classical conditioning, which we're going to further elaborate on. He earned a Nobel Prize in 1904, and shortly after he became a distinguished researcher. He trained animals using the saliva responses to figure out how their brains help them to adapt to what happens in their environment.
So can you tell us more about classical conditioning?
Yes, so classical conditioning is a type of conditioning where neutral is the trigger and automatic. It's also a reflexive response through its association with stimulus, which is the cause of a neutral response. On this diagram, it's showing his theory. So the dog the dog salivates once it sees the food, which is unconditioned reflexes, and then once the dog sees the food and hears the bell, which is a conditioned reflex, it salivates as well.
So, understanding growth and development from Pavlov's work is very important because it helps us understand how learning through experience and behavior is learned through repeated actions. What I mean by that is, if I tell them 20 times, hey, when you're doing something, you can't do that, it's gonna come in your mind like, I can't do that.
Right.
Or if I bring you, if you're in school and you know, like, your teacher rewards you for putting up all your papers, you're gonna make sure every day you get up and you put your papers up. So that's you learning through actions or learning through positive or negative reinforcements, which was Pavlov's work in human growth and development. This also impacts children's development as well in the early childhood because they learn things as far as repeated behaviors, like they learn not to do things. So what I mean by that is early childhood kids, they're very young, so they're learning, they're crawling, they're walking, they're getting into things that they're not supposed to. Yes. And they also get like, this is where they learn like their fears, stuff that makes them happy also. Just kind of learning their preferences, but also developing habits. But at the same time, we also know it's the emotional aspect to that, so they're learning also how to regulate their emotions as a child. What I mean by that is like they're knowing like when something hurts, they cry. When something's funny, they laugh. It's just all about them learning kind of themselves, but it's based off their experiences and off the actions that the adults in their lives are showing.
Right.
Now, Pavlov's work put into real life examples, I feel like it's always important because it shows you how this changed our world for our everyday life.
Right.
So what I mean by that is, like I talked about earlier with the school comment, if we're in school every day and we hear a bell, what do that tell you?
Time to go home.
In the class.
Or start in class sometimes, right? So that's conditioning our brain because of repeated, they tell us in the beginning of the year when y'all hear that bell, go to class. So it's like a repeated action. So Pavlov, we don't really know, but he put that into our lives. Like he's the reason that this is like this. I would also say it's like a form of conditioning. That's really it with this thing. With this experiment, it's just all about conditioning and how it trains you into the everyday life with action.
Right.
Like I said, his work has impacted human growth and development forever. It will forever be around. Scientists in the future will always go based off of his work and other scientists' work. They will build off of that. So at this point, I feel like it has not only impacted our everyday lives, but it's impacted our lives forever.
Yeah. All right, so I definitely agree with everything that you guys have been saying. Just Pavlov's discoveries being groundbreaking. However, myself, along with many other people, would argue that Pavlov placed too much emphasis on external behavior, and that was coupled with too little emphasis on internal processes, i.e. thoughts and emotions.
So just to ask you a question, why do you feel like why do you exactly feel like that?
Because I feel that he puts too much emphasis on external behaviors, because if you just kind of like dig into Pavlov's theory, it is a behaviorist theory. And Pavlov as well as Skinner, they kind of came up with what I consider like a narrow-minded theory that, you know, hey, if you give a child external, you know, reinforcements, whether it be punishments or, you know, positive reinforcements, then that directly contributes to learning. However, that directly contributes to better behavior, which can contribute to learning. But I don't think that, you know, like they're directly, like Pavlov's theory and learning are directly related to each other.
And I can see that, because even though you give a child prizes, they don't always mean they're going to sit there and learn what you're telling them.
Right.
Or
They just learned that I would
prize,
get, right.
me doing
Or
good,
I'm doing this
equal
because I'm
prize.
getting a prize.
Right.
Or y'all know how some kids take their parents home their progress report.
Yeah.
Some kids literally only doing it because they know
Yeah.
mom's gonna pay
Yeah.
$50 for the eggs.
Right. So yes, like I'm saying, Pavlov and Skinner, they came up with, well, Pavlov came up with the theory, Skinner later added to it. It's kind of a behaviorist theory, and it assumes that learning is the product of reinforcement, which, like I said, I don't necessarily agree with this view, because it doesn't promote deeper understanding, creativity, or critical thinking. And I feel like those are skills that a lot of today's learners are going to need. Yeah, I do believe that reinforcement does shape behavior, but it doesn't explain why students interpret lessons differently, or why some are motivated by curiosity rather than external rewards.
So do you feel like even though a student is learning off of the reinforcements, we can somehow interpret that into their learning? Because I kind of figured that's what he's getting at.
I feel like you can, but I feel like to just adopt his whole theory wouldn't be, I think it wouldn't be for the greater good of like the whole class, because some students, they don't learn. Like, I feel like I was one of the students, I didn't care like if I got punished or if I got a reward. I kind of was just gonna do what I wanted to do. And some students are like that, so I feel like just, you know, taking his whole theory and just making that be how you run your classroom, I don't think it would work. Because I also just don't agree that learning is the product of reinforcement. Like,
So as we're all in here to do something of teaching,
Mhm.
right? Would y'all
I would definitely
adapt
use
this?
parts of it, but I wouldn't solely use it.
I would use some parts, but like she said, like it's not gonna be enforced like in everything that we do.
Yeah, I would say the same for my class, because I always say, like, when I have a classroom, we would do like the chunks of the toys, like the prizes and stuff, and we would do like a point system, you know, the red or gray.
But notice you wasn't doing that every day, because take away from the
value of
Yeah.
learning, because I feel like now the kids come in and they're like, we're gonna sit quiet for Miss E today because we know she's running in the box to get us something.
Right. Not
And it's
because-
like it shouldn't really be about
Yeah.
a prize or get anything out there, because you're here ultimately for education.
Right. All right, so Bandura, he is a theorist that expanded Pavlov and Skinner's view by recognizing that students not only learn through conditioning, but through observation, modeling, and cognitive process. And I believe that this broader perspective better reflects the realities of today's classroom, where students are, you know, constantly influenced by their peers, technology, and their own ability to self-regulate. And so, you know, finally, our application to the classroom. While I do agree with Pavlov's contribution to the scientific study of learning, I do disagree with the overemphasis on external behavior as the sole driver for student growth. Reinforcement, which is Pavlov's theory, it is still widely used today, and I would definitely bring it into my classroom. I would not use it solely to teach my classroom, though. And I think overall his theory just encourages us to think how teachers will balance behavior and cognition. I think it is a behaviorist theory. It's not really a cognitive theory. It is a behaviorist.
I would say the same even with us in college.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, you know, look at them now going into the dorms, searching them. That's a reinforcement. So now people know you can't do what you used to do in dorms. Or even the rooms that they set in place for us in the buildings, not being ready to come in bonded or sleepwear, or a teacher can turn you around. That's a reinforcement, because now you know that if you come here in the bonded and you get turned around, or you come here in sleepwear and you get turned around, you can't really follow it because it's a policy. They're reinforcing their policy.
Definitely agree. So
These
that's
are
all.
sources. That's what complete our podcast for today.
Thank
See you guys
you.
later.